Hey guys, we're going to be going over example 2 now. So I kind of just highlighted everything. F of t, and then that's going to stand for the temperature F t hours after 6 a.m. And then we have to explain what F of 0 equals 58 means, what F of 6 equals n means, and F of 3 less than F of 9. So when we're going to explain these, first let's remember something is a function of something. Let's just look at this. F is a function of t. So I plug t in and I get out F. And now we're going to look over here, the temp F. So this tells you we're talking about the temperature whenever we say the letter F. So think about it, we're talking about Fahrenheit. That's what this F comes from. T hours. So T is going to represent the number of hours after 6 a.m. Okay? So this isn't that easy to understand in the beginning, but we have to get better at our reading comprehension. So the temp F T hours after 6 a.m., what that means is the temperature F T, the number of hours after 6 a.m. So let's just look at the first one. F of 0 equals 58. So if I looked at this, remember how we were talking about it as F of T? T is substituted with 0. So the value of T is 0. Well, T meant hours after 6 a.m. So if we're talking about 0 hours after 6 a.m., we're talking about right at 6 a.m. That's what this means. So the functional value, 0 hours after 6 a.m. is 58 degrees. So the temperature, 0 hours after 6 a.m. is 58 degrees. And I'm going to write that out so that way it makes sense. So F stands for the outside temperature, or the temp, of, and it normally say F, but remember this parenthesis means of, so I'm going to put a slash just so you know what I'm talking. No, I'm not going to put a slash because I don't want to think division. So the temp of 0 hours after 6 a.m., so that's this part, equals means is 58 degrees. But at some point, we have to use some common sense. The temp of 0 hours after 6 a.m., that just means 6 a.m. So the temperature at 6 a.m. is 58 degrees. Another way to think of it is, if our input's 0, that's when we started taking our temperatures. Because it said the temperature 0 hours after 6 a.m., we started looking at the thermometer at 6 a.m. So the time after is 0, that's just when we start. So when we started measuring, we're at 58 degrees. Now let's look at the next one. F of 6. So it's the same exact concept. The temperature 6 hours after 6 a.m. is n degrees. So we don't know what it is, but we know that this is how we're going to represent it algebraically. F of 6 equals n. The temperature outside, 6 hours after 6 a.m. is n. So when we're writing this, just make sure when you read it, it's not multiplying. The functional value of 6 is n. And I hope that kind of explains it. I guess if I'm going to write it out, it would be the outside temp. So that's the F part. And then we're looking of 6 hours after 6 a.m. That's the T part, is n degrees. So we don't have a definite degree here, but we know we're just going to call it n. Now, if you want to be really on top of it, well, 6 hours after 6 a.m., we're talking about noon. Maybe that's why they chose n. But for whatever reason they chose it, we would be talking about noon, okay? So we're measuring, we started measuring at 6 in the morning. We've been measuring for 6 hours. The temperature we recorded is n. I know it would probably make more sense if I threw in a real number, but we have to get used to talking about things abstractly. Now the last one, F of 3. So F of 3 means the temp 3 hours after 6 a.m. We have a less than, so we're just going to put is less than, and then I'm going to have to finish that rest part down here. The temp of 9 hours after 6 a.m. Okay? Well, let's just think about it. All we're saying is the temperature, it was colder here than it was here because the temperature is less. But now let's just put it into actual time. 3 hours after 6 a.m. would be 9 a.m. So 9 a.m. is less than, and let's see what 9 would be. So 6, it'd be 3 p.m. is less than the temp at 3 p.m. because 9 hours after 6 in the morning is 3 p.m. So in other words, if the temp here is less than the temp here, all we're saying is it was colder at 9 a.m. than it was at 3 p.m. That's all this means. So that's the hardest one to read, so make sure it makes sense. The functional value of 3 is less than the functional value of 9. The functional value of 3 represents 3 hours after 6 a.m. The functional value of 9 represents the temperature 9 hours after 6 a.m. So remember, these aren't representing times, these are representing temperatures. This temperature is less than that temperature. Okay? So go ahead and work on the monitoring